job is to make stormwater exciting, and hopefully I can do that for y'all in my presentation, Living in a Watershed. So basically the health of our waterways, the health of our rivers, our streams, our lakes, our oceans, those are all a direct reflection of our actions on land, okay? It's a direct reflection of our ability as a society and as individuals to act as environmental stewards, to protect those resources for today and for future generations. So I'll start my presentation by going to asking from Jim Cantori in the National Weather Station, or National Weather Channel, and seeing the definition of what is a watershed. So we'll make sure that we're all on the same page here. And as you'll see, it's a difficult, that's okay. It can be a difficult term to define, as we'll see as he grabs individuals off of the street to ask.
First victim. I need you to tell me what a watershed is. Do you have any idea?
Watershed? A watershed? Where people go to the bathroom? Sweating, I guess.
Something to do with sweating? Like after you run, when
you perspire, yeah.
And then you shed it? We wanted to ask you if you knew what a watershed was.
Watershed?
Yeah.
Is it kind of like the rain?
Do you know what a watershed is?
A shed that holds water.
I want to ask you something. Do you know what a watershed is?
No.
Do you have any idea? What do you think it has something to do with?
I don't know.
What a watershed is?
Yeah.
That's just a drain pool, I guess you'd say. Or the drain area is where the water, the rainwater drains into the river.
Correct. That's a great answer.
So as you guys can see, watershed can be a hard term to define. But basically it's an area of land that all drains to a single point along a waterway. And maybe it's not as important that we can be able to spell that definition out, but it is important for two reasons. One, we all live in a watershed, and two, we all live downstream. A great example of we all live downstream was in the news here recently, in which Japan offered thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to Canada in order to assist in the cleanup of debris that was a direct result from the tsunami disaster. So even if we're oceans apart, we still live downstream. And I want to use this slide that was created by Dr. Dan Hitchcock at the Brook Institute of Coastal Ecology to kind of go back and think about what we all learned about the water cycle in school. And we know how water behaves in a natural system. And we're looking here at the forested water budget. So whenever it rains, that water is able to infiltrate, right? It's landing on what we call pervious surfaces, or surfaces that can absorb water. Trees and other vegetation are absorbing that water, taking it up through its roots and transpiring it back into the atmosphere. It's evaporating. Not much of it is running off, right? And our groundwater tables are able to recharge. Now I invite you to think about what you saw whenever you stepped out of your home today, what you saw on your commute to school or to work. What did you see? You saw houses, schools, grocery stores, gas stations, streets, parking lots. These are all things that are necessary for society, right? But those things are all in the built environment. Those are impervious surfaces. So what that means is whenever we have a rain event, that water runs off of our rooftops. It runs down our driveways and our streets. And some of it's going to evaporate, but but not much of it is going to be able to infiltrate. Scientists have found that 1 acre of paved parking lot generates 16 times more runoff as a meadow, as a grassy meadow the same size. So why is this an environmental concern? Okay, what might that water, our great connector, what might it be transporting as it's running down those rooftops and parking lots and driveways? And what it's creating is basically a cornucopia of pollution we consider as part of stormwater runoff. So if you think about, just take something like automobiles and all the materials that our automobiles leave behind, such as gasoline, oil, freight dust. You think about activities in the home landscape, fertilizers, pesticides, even grass clippings and leaves and excess yard debris can be part of this. Things such as pet waste, sediment from erosion, these are all things that are carried by that stormwater runoff and deposited directly into our waterways. So if I could give one message to everybody in our community, it would be that stormwater is not treated. So whenever you see when it's captured in a storm drain, if it's captured via curb and gutter, it's taken through an intricate system of ditches and pipes and it's deposited into a nearby waterway. And what a video, a clip that was shared with me that I think really captures that, really captures what it is that we are putting into our waterways, is one that I'm about to show you. And this was created by a group called Toxic.org. And this is an underwater video footage, okay? So this is the outflow pipe of a storm drain, all right? And this is time-elapsed, so it takes place over a 4-hour period. And what you're gonna see after a couple seconds is it's starting to rain. And whenever it rains, that water is capturing all those pollutants, and it's going to deposit it into this waterway. And this footage was taken in the Puget Sound, but it can certainly be taken here locally. So as y'all can see, we're starting to see basically the face of stormwater right there. You can see how green and murky that water is. Again, it's that cornucopia of debris. And this is why the Environmental Protection Agency has deemed stormwater runoff as the #1 threat to water quality. And that was a video that was produced by Laura James and Lamont Granquist. So we thank them for that. So whenever we're talking about living in a watershed, as you can see, our impacts on our waterways are great. The Environmental Protection Agency has deemed that 40% of U.S. water bodies do not meet water quality standards. So they're impaired in some way or another. Maybe they're not fit for swimming, maybe they're not fit for fishing, etc. But 40% of our water bodies are impaired. So our impacts are great, but the actions that we can take to reduce those impacts are many. So now in the remaining part of my presentation, I want to focus on people who've inspired me, both in our community and across the United States. This is a group of volunteers with AmeriCorps. They're in downtown Charleston. They're marking storm drains. So they're affixing a medallion, a simple message that basically says to passersby, do not dump this drains to waterways. We try to get out messages about behavioral things that we can all do to protect our water. And basically, it is putting waste in its place. This is a billboard that we created. You may have seen it. It was around the Tri-County area. But it was all about making that connection between the simple action of picking up after your pet and protecting local fisheries, all right? The South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control has deemed that in Charleston County alone, 10,000 pounds of pet waste are deposited a day. 10,000 pounds of pet waste. And so if that material is not cleaned up, if that material is not thrown away, then whenever we have our next rainfall event, there's going to be a major surge into our waterways, into our rivers, into our lakes, into our ocean of this material, which is 2.5 times more potent in bacteria and pathogens than human feces. So a gross thing to think about, right? But still, a simple action that we can all do to protect our waterways. Litter. This is our most obvious form of pollution. Many forms of water pollution we can't really see with the naked eye. But litter, this picture I took as part of a local effort with the Surfrider Foundation, partnering with a couple of the kayak outfitters, getting about 40 people out on the water for an afternoon to clean up waterways. And what the group found was really impressive. And what impressed me more than anything was how happy everybody was. Everybody was in such a good mood all day to be out there making obvious positive change in their environment. And the next morning, after this event, members of the group decided, even though all of this trash, all of this litter that had been collected, even though it was all ready for pickup, neatly packaged, right? They decided to dump it all out. And the reason they wanted to dump it out is to capture images like this. And this is all of the debris that was collected in a 2-hour time span. 2 hours, 40 people. And this is the difference that they were able to make. Another group that I've had the chance to become involved with is a group called Gyres. They work with nationally and internationally, and they're a group of marine scientists and environmental advocates who are basically going out and studying the world's garbage patches, right? So the currents in our oceans and the prevailing winds create these areas in our oceans in which all of the garbage kind of comes together. We've heard of these, right? Well, what the group at Gyres is finding, they're going out there and they're doing research. They're doing plankton tows. And they're finding it's not like they're going out to these garbage patches and it's really recognizable items, right, floating on the surface, you know, washing machines, refrigerators and whatnot. It's actually more like a plastic soup, a confetti of plastic. Because what's happening is these plastics, they're not going away. They're photodegrading. So the sun heats the plastic up and it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. And they're able to gather images like this in which our sea life is unable to discern the difference between plankton or their basic food sources such as fish, and instead they're ingesting plastic. And they're finding in some of their research that oftentimes when they're in the middle of these garbage patches, they're finding 10 pieces of plastic to 1 piece of plankton. And they've even gotten as high as 40 pieces of plastic to 1 piece of plankton. And we can attribute that debris, 80% of that debris in our world's ocean is attributed to stormwater runoff. So I talked about some behaviors that we can do. And basically, you know, living in a watershed, what we do on land affects our waterways. So behaviors is largely putting waste in this place. That's pretty simple stuff, right? Now I want to just touch briefly on what we call structural best management practices, or low impact development. And this is a slide also produced by Dr. Dan Hitchcock, and it just exemplifies 2 of those low impact development measures in which the rain comes off the rooftop, is captured in a cistern or a rain barrel, and the overflow of that is directed into a rain garden. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on those, two features, low impact development features, but the overarching theme of these stormwater low impact development measures is to basically slow down that water, to try and replicate or try and rebalance when we talked about the forested water budget and the urban water budget. So we're trying to slow down that water, we're trying to keep it on site. So this is a picture that I took in Portland, Oregon. Portland is one of the places in our country where stormwater is treated. In South Carolina, all of our stormwater flows to waterways untreated, but in Portland it is. And definitely a mecca of these practices, these low impact development practices. And this is a picture of a rain garden. A rain garden situated adjacent to a parking lot. So whenever we talked about all those features and how they're necessary for society to sustain itself, when we were talking about, you know, our commute into school and all the impervious surfaces, we're able to sort of incorporate these features into our existing society. You can see here the parking lot. Off to the left is pervious pavers as well. And so that's trying to rebalance, like I said, the water system, or the water cycle. And all across the country, there is an atlas that's available. It's called the Nemo Network, the Low Impact Development Atlas. And in South Carolina, this atlas is alive and well. If you go, you can just search for Low Impact Development Atlas, and a map will pop up. You can zoom into your area, and you can find these demonstration sites near your home. So whenever people call up to the extension office and they tell me that they're interested in installing a rain garden into their home, or at their house, then I can tell them you know, places to go and see them. And rain gardens, I think they make a lot of sense. They definitely make a lot of sense here in the South, because what they're doing is they're funneling the water that's flowing off of those impervious surfaces, particularly your roof, and they're capturing it into a depression basin, a landscaped area that really looks most like any other landscape feature. But the plants and the soil medium are used to remove pollutants and allow that water to infiltrate slowly. Another one, this is a person who has inspired me and inspired many there in the middle, Billy Niffen. And Billy is associated with ARCSA, the American Rainwater Catchment Systems Association. He and his wife live in North Texas, and they live completely off of harvested rainwater. So they don't have a well, they don't have municipal water supply, they capture rainwater, and they have a filtration system on it that allows them to drink it and use it for other household needs. But when I first met Billy, this is one of the reasons he's an inspiration to me. North Texas was in the middle of a severe drought, and they hadn't had any rain in 10 months. 10 months time. But Billy and his wife still had a 2-month supply of water which they had stored. He has the ability to capture and hold and store 25,000 gallons of rainwater. And Billy teaches programs on rainwater harvesting and system design. And this is a picture of people locally. And I want to talk a minute about the ripple effect. So these are all people that have either directly or indirectly been impacted by Billy and his message. These are all sites, these are all places in your community, be it schools, be it college campuses, be it community centers, in which people have installed, you know, different shapes and sizes of these rainwater harvesting features. And it's such a simple concept, right, that we've been doing for thousands of years, and now it's getting this increasing awareness and energy that it makes sense to do it here. And this is the last person I'm going to talk about as my source of inspiration, Dr. Douglas Tallamy. And Dr. Tallamy, he works for the University of Delaware as an entomologist. And Dr. Talmy says this himself, and this was a concept that was so obvious that he didn't think to articulate. But basically, he's looking at the direct relationship between using native plants in the home landscape or in landscaping efforts, the direct relationship with biodiversity. So why does biodiversity matter? Why do we care about biodiversity? Biodiversity offers ecosystem services for us. So biodiversity provides oxygen, pollinates our crops, sequesters carbon, cleans our water, to name a few. Humans do not live in a bubble, right? And Dr. Talmy, in his research, he's basically been able to provide those numbers in which he's gone into areas in which mostly non-native plant species are utilized versus places where they are using these native plant species. And what he's finding is that native ornamentals support 29 times more biodiversity than non-natives. And he has really charged a lot of people with this research. And native plants, believe it or not, they're a recommended practice for protecting water quality. Why would that be? Because native plants, they exist here naturally. So they require basically no fertilizer and little to no irrigation once they're established. I wanted to show an example of a couple of people who Dr. Talmy has really, charged. This is Jane Jabor and Lynn Neffert. And they read his book, Bringing Nature Home, and they were so inspired by this book that they opened their own native plant nursery, Roots and Shoots. So I'll finish in saying that water is a finite resource, right? All the water that our planet will ever have is already here. I'll read a quote from Jacques Cousteau where he says, "We forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one." We forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one. And I think you can interpret that in many different ways. But pertaining to living in a watershed, we make decisions each day. We make choices each day that can either negatively or positively impact our environment. I challenge us to take those steps to modify our way of thinking and to do. To think about leaving the world each and every day, leaving the world in a better place than what you found it. And it could be as simple as an action as picking up a piece of litter that could have found its way into our waterways, to more complex activities such as installing a rain garden or a rain barrel at your school or home. So water connects us, and we all live in a watershed.